Today, you'll hear how it was developed. That's ChromaDepth, that is. And its impact on laser shows. And later on, we'll be visited by artist Mark Finne, who uses ChromaDepth and in his paintings. And Jessica Ramirez, an artist and art professor at the Manhattan Community College, who will demonstrate a few steps in creating your own ChromaDepth 3D art. Today, we'll be visiting a few towns with this week's gallery, My Town. We still have a little room left this week if you want to send some images. In an effort to do justice to some 180-degree and 3D images, we spent the better part of the week experimenting with different processes, or shall I say Dave Camo and Jim Harp did. Dave will explain the best way to view these images, and we hope to leave you with a better understanding of the capabilities of that medium.
And this interface is from Masuji and some other things, and so it's similar to what you see normally, where at the bottom you can shift into your different 3D formats, right? So you can, now this has the American flag, so I'm just going to change it to gray, but you have the ability to kind of scroll around, and you can see this in anaglyph. I can even scroll with my mouse wheel, and I can move, right? So I get kind of some better 3D, some better immersion options. You can click full to go full screen. You can just click and it'll disappear the menu. It'll bring it back. So you can go forward and back. If you're on a mobile phone, you can hit this little touch button. And what that'll do is enable the accelerometer so you can kind of move around and view it that way, wearing your glasses. So there's a lot of different options. That's probably the most simple one. But even more simple is just watching as we move along with our options in our screen share. So I believe that is all that I have to say about all of that. And now John will introduce Benjamin Martin. Take it away, John.
Well, thank you. That was great. Now, Benjamin Martin is a multimedia artist living in Brooklyn. He was educated at the School of Visual Arts. Get my screen up for you. He has had work exhibited at the Whitney, published in Wall Street Journal. He has also had a lifelong interest in stereoscopic media and has been shooting and creating 3D works since around 2014. He is a member of the New York Stereoscopic Association. And are you out there, yeah, my friend? But welcome, welcome again there, Ben. So if you could explain this picture a little bit. I don't know if you heard us, Dave, going through the explanation of how we did the 180, but I can ask you the questions now.
Sure.
What camera did you use? Even though everybody knows.
Sure, yeah. So I've been using the Views XR, which is this camera right here. Yeah, I mean, I arrived at it just with this great form factor with this sort of stem, but the real feature of it is it shoots 2D 360 images, and then it has a little switch here and this wonderful action that allows you to shoot 3D stereo images. Yeah, so I shot everything you're going to see here with this camera.
When did you shoot this?
I shot this early May in Times Square. I don't know how much you described about it, but yeah, I was able to go. There was just a Saturday afternoon, and this area is normally really bustling with people, pretty much any day of the week, any time of the day. And I wanted to make sure to try to document sort of what the city looks like with the COVID-19 pandemic kind of taking hold. Yeah, here's another scene, really kind of a densely populated area, right in Times Square in Manhattan. It's just, if anyone's familiar with what it looks like on a normal day, this is just not it.
Could you explain what you did there, Jim, to make it look that way?
Well, actually, this is an interesting thing, and it's a big topic. I'll try to be brief. Stereo Photomaker now has some really nice functionality for VR images. And actually, if you just hit number 7, when you have a rectilinear image up or a fisheye image, you have an option of just changing from rectilinear to fisheye or fisheye to rectilinear. And the Views XR camera, its original capture is fisheye. They're fisheye lenses. So in a sense, what Stereo Photomaker is doing is just undoing the post-processing that the Views software does. This is what we're seeing here is a lot closer to what was originally captured.
Yeah, their software is pretty good for I mean, if you want to kind of do batch corrections, if you want to do any sort of like minimal video editing, but if it means getting into the workflow with Stereo Photomaker, obviously, you know, it's best to just get with one that's going to do everything that you need, like that one can. But yeah, so
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Good.
no, continue. I'm just going to make a
Oh,
quick
sure.
adjustment because I'm wondering why we're a little bit crushed down here. I don't like that. So as
Oh,
you speak,
sure.
go ahead.
So this is Union Square Station in Manhattan. That and what's nice is you can see the time and date stamp on that little marquee, and it's at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday in May, and you can see it's just there's as many birds as people there. So just a really kind of bizarre scene.
What time of day was it?
2:30. I think it's 2:38 p.m. Yeah,
Wow.
on Saturday.
Oh yeah, well, I had asked because it wasn't
Oh, sure.
obvious.
Yeah.
The only question I did not need to ask, I asked, but but that's just the way that goes. That's interesting.
Oh, and so I live in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And I happened to be going to the grocery store the other day, and I've been trying to implement this camera as sort of my shoot from the hip, go to kind of everyday point and shoot camera, and it's done pretty well for that. So I happened to carry it with me when I was going to the grocery store the other day, and on my return, I passed a protest march going on, and so just thousands of people streaming past, and I got my views out, and I just sort of posted up right in the middle of the stream of people, and I shot some video and some stills of just to kind of document what's going on and that people are peacefully protesting too right now. So yeah.
Now, how do people react to the camera? Or do
very
they react
hairy eyeballs, many hairy eyeballs. So I had to try to just put out the energy that I was not a threat, not trying to just no subversion here, and hope for the best. So yeah, people were.
Hey, show us how that camera opens again. It looks like a photomic
Oh, it feels
switchblade.
so good too. So yeah, you just hold it. And bam.
Oh, there you go. That scares the hell out of me just looking
and
at that.
I mean, this sort of cutout structure is really sturdy. I actually dropped it a couple.
We're going to move on to Martin Chubb. He's a retired electrical engineer. We get a lot of engineers in this 3D thing. I wonder why that is so. That's incredible. One-time physicist, because that just makes sense, who's been taking stereo photos since the late 1980s, and he's a member of the Minnesota Stereo Photography Club. And we welcome him. Do we have you, Martin?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you very much again for sharing the images.
Oh, thank you, John.
You're so very welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Can you explain a little bit about this image?
This is the remains of a liquor store, Minnehaha Lake Wine and Spirits. This is my neighborhood. This is right across the street from the 3rd Precinct Police, where the cops who were involved in that caused the whole late unrest worked out of. And so a lot of the neighborhood burned down. This is about a 10-minute bike ride from my house. And I know there are dilemmas in taking pictures of things like this. And I debated it, but finally decided that to fall in with the long tradition, probably 160-year tradition of 3D disaster photography, and show you our part of, anyway, our local disaster, not the human story, but the physical stuff.
I'm certainly glad you went. Yeah, I'm very glad you went out and did that. What kind of camera were you using when you shot this?
Fuji W1.
A W1, an old time, like an ancient Fuji. And why do you have a preference to that? I'm going to move to the next picture in the meantime, but why do you have a preference with that?
I like the longer battery life, and I very rarely ever shoot video, and so I didn't really care about the enhanced video that you would get with a W3.
They were pretty cool too, because you were able to send pictures to another W1, right? W1's actually broadcast to another W1. There was like a mode you can send a picture to another person.
Yeah, it had infrared. Yeah,
that's very cool.
There was a building apartment complex under construction here, and that's a boom truck that was working on it. You can see that the tires are gone, all the hydraulic hoses are gone, and it's for some reason sort of even sunk into the ground there a little bit. I suspect that probably it rained between the burning and when I took the pictures, so I think it sunk into the mud. This building was 5 stories tall. The bottom story was masonry and concrete, and the other 4 were framed in wood. And you can see they're all gone, and the flames from this were visible for like tens of miles. This is the 3rd precinct itself, where the cops involved worked, and this was also burned. You can see the entrance way there. You can see the ashes covering it, and they've stacked concrete blocks around it to keep people out. And they have a sizable flagpole, but they've jury rigged a smaller flagpole and a flag in front of it.
And these were all shot with the W1. What other cameras have you shot with?
Most recently, my sort of backup camera and close-up camera is a HTC Evo 3D phone. But before that, I had a stereo data maker rig that I put together. I had a finger sync rig that I put together. And before that, for many years, I shot with a realist.
And you've been experimenting with pinholes, right?
Yes, not pinhole stereo. I haven't ever tried the pinhole stereo, but yeah, I guess that's sort of lately anyway. That's my other major photography obsession. This, by the way, is the drive-through window at Wendy's. So your order may take a while.
Oh man, hope you like it. Well done. But how does it? Did you ever go to this Wendy's, by the way?
Oh yeah, I've been there. I mean, I know this area intimately. It's where there were a lot of good restaurants. There's some of them that survived. By the way, I see someone's asking about. I believe that's Anarchy, not Antifa. And I think there's an Ansel Adams photo actually of a graffitum like this, so it goes way back.
Could be Anthony. No, but that's interesting. Now, did you take these shots on the same day?
Yes, I went out there. It was actually just last Sunday when I finally decided to do it, and I was surrounded by people taking cell phone video, and cars were going by, and people were just gawking and saying, "Oh my God!" Looking at the.
And how close are those locations of the places that you locations that you just shot?
This is all within. I think everything that I've taken pictures of here is probably within a block or so radius. So it's these are very close. So the destruction went on for quite some distance, but this is all in a fairly small area, and you can see that they've painted out a lot of the graffiti, especially the naughty words, like in the background. This was a Somali restaurant that was that's boarded up. And they were fairly judicious in painting out the graffiti, and you can see that the sentiment in the foreground was let stand.
Yeah, it says an awful lot.
This is an AutoZone store. This is actually about the first thing to burn, and I believe they've toppled it in a bit so that it isn't going to come down on anybody.
Have you did you frequent these? Well, obviously you do with the Wendy's. How about these stores? Did you ever frequent these?
Bought my last car battery at that AutoZone, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Yeah, and there were, there's one of the buildings in one of the other photos had a nice Ethiopian restaurant in it, and that we used to like. There's a lot of over 20 years since the 20 odd years that we've lived here. The street came back alive when a lot of the vacant storefronts were taken over by minority owned businesses that got a foothold, and the neighborhood was transformed by that, and now unfortunately a lot of them are going to be starting over. I'm sorry to say. There's a lot of people out of work too, of course.
Yeah. Did they do a GoFundMe for any of this? For the small business?
Yeah, there's the Lake Street Council has one, and there have been individual ones for particular businesses as well. Yeah. Not for AutoZone, as far as I know. But.
Yeah, AutoZone is gonna they'll make out. It's those small businesses that people I think should be supporting.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Do you know of any of those? Maybe sometime during the thing you could just put those on the chat. Any of that GoFundMe stuff, and maybe somebody might be interested in giving $10 to the Ethiopian guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I will have to dig around, but I can do that during.
You got wonderful, generous people, and I'm sure they're interested in doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is the remains of an old Oddfellows hall that housed a nightclub called El Nuevo Rodeo, where both George Floyd and, oddly enough, Derek Chauvin worked as bouncers at one time. So this was a sizable, like 4-story brick building. I think they've actually hauled away a lot of the rubble in the meantime.
Got it. And we took, by the way, we took a little liberty with your image, with the 2 images, if you don't mind.
No, I love this. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. So during the rehearsal, John asked me, did I have any before pictures? And I realized that, I've taken a lot of pictures in the neighborhood, but they're all things like, people's exotic lawn decor and the parks and the river and things like that. And I haven't really photographed the businesses much. You don't really think about it. But as it happens, I dug around through my archives and I did find a sort of accidental stereo with not a lot of depth in it of the Wicker store beforehand. You can see the signs, the rounded end of the one sign, and that's the before picture on the left, and of course an after picture.
Yeah. Well, it is. We really appreciate you doing that, and you and anyone from your club, from the Minnesota Stereo Photo Club, is always welcome. That you really, it's amazing. Thank you for going through all the trouble. Oh, wait a second. There's few things you can say that are as interesting as the story of ChromaDepth. You go everything from Russian submarines to the $100 bill.
Well, the ChromaDepth process was invented by, you put prisms in front of both eyes, you can get rays of colored light to converge at a point in space which is closer than the actual image. And since prisms bend light differently with different colors, you can basically map the entire spectrum of light into depth, where red would be closest, then orange, yellow, green, and finally blue. If consider 2 identical prisms, let's say acrylic, if you will, and if you put one in front of your left eye, and before you put one in front of your right eye, you rotate it 180 degrees, then as you can see in the picture, the rays of light would both converge inward towards your nose, and you have a perception of the depth at the apex of those 2 lines. Even though the color started at the top in the rectangular black box, red ended up out in space and blue further away. The purity of the color does make a real enormous difference, except when you're using print. See, print media uses CMYK mixtures to give you a pure color. However, when you're using a display or a computer monitor, there are 3 little pixels at RGB to create the image, and therefore each of those little dots for each pixel will appear at a different depth, basically blurring the image. One of the problems with the process is for TV media, there's a blurring, and we got around that by creating what we called HD, or high definition. That is, we took out one of the lenses in the glasses so that one eye could look directly at every image and see the clarity. The other eye would see a slightly diminished 3-dimensional image because both lenses are not working towards the effect. But you're gaining something in that process, in that you can look at CRTs with perfect clarity. The process also has an interesting point that if you stand further away from an image, it gets deeper and deeper. So what you lose by using only one lens in depth, you can gain by going slightly further away from the plane of the image. Well, by coincidence, I happen to live like 10 blocks away from the Hayden Planetarium in Manhattan. And when I got involved in this process and had the prototype glasses, which were, by the way, were liquid prisms, they're easy to make on a kitchen table, I took those to the laser shows and saw them through the glasses. So I was the only person in the world looking at a 3-dimensional laser show with a great distance between the image, because the dome is 60 feet away and the depth is enormous because of the distance between you and the image. The images on the dome, which has a radius of 60 feet in that hemisphere, were enormously deep because of the distance from your eyes to the dome. So the red, yellow, and green and blue lasers floated in space in front of your eyes. And it turns out the very first commercial application of this process was with a marvelous company called Audiovisual Imagineering in Virginia. And they had an exclusive license to use this in laser shows around the country. And that's how we got started in this business. what was necessary to make this happen, because you couldn't make a company or build glasses out of very dangerous liquid optics. But that was the prototype, and basically every few weeks he would send me a new pair, because as I looked up at the dome, I could smell the cinnamon oil, which was one of the liquids, cinnamon oil eating through the epoxy and fearfully to drip into my eyes. So basically there was one pair at a time, a new pair of glasses every couple of weeks when I smelled the leaking. 5 years later, when the enabling technology was finally available. Most people who think they understand the ChromaDepth process are mistaken. They think of a prism. Actually, one prism is not enough. In order to create a quality amount of depth between red and blue, you need a high dispersion prism. That means you need a prism with a high index of refraction. You got to find the right material, whether it's a liquid or plastic or whatever, that has that high index of refraction, because that creates this huge, larger arc between red and blue. So you get that distance between them as you see in the picture. However, when you pick a liquid or a plastic to do that, something interesting happens. You do get a quality depth distance between the colors. It's really enough to make it interesting. However, the red images converge right next to your nose. In other words, the colors go from red to blue in depth, but the closest one is right against your nose, and you have no choice. If you want to have a large arc, red is going to be close to your nose. And if you try and focus on your finger in front of your nose, as I'm doing now, and then focus further away for blue, it's painful. You would not want to do that for any length of time. So what we had to do, and what this young man did who invented this idea, he took a low dispersion prism, which had an index of refraction that was closer to air, which turned out to be polystyrene, and he built another prism back to back with the first prism, which was the first prism in the liquid form was cinnamon oil or ethyl cinnamate, and the second prism was glycerin, and they basically were like, if you look down the top of the glasses, you'd see like a little rectangle and a diagonal forming two separate triangular cells, if you will. One of which was filled with cinnamon oil and then sealed, and the other one with glycerin. And then you could use the glasses that were epoxied into a goggle, a safety goggle. And that was the glasses that I took to the laser show that leaked every couple of weeks. Yeah, I thought it was a cool idea. And I thought it actually would work with sonar systems. So I was doing secret work for the Navy, designing sonar systems, looking for detecting, classifying Russian submarines. So I was doing top secret work, and I read about this young man because Georgia Tech was wanting to license the technology, put a little ad in a Computer Graphics World magazine, and I read it, and I said, hey, maybe this technology, whatever it is, would work. So I signed a non-disclosure on behalf of my company. The young man came in, we spoke to our management about what the technology was, and my management was not interested in it, and I said to this young man, let's do it together. The company's not interested, fine, I like the idea, we'll try. And we approached Georgia Tech, and they said, fine, we have nobody else. So they let us license the technology. We incorporated it in Delaware as ChromaTech Inc. And we started looking for ways to make it. It ended up taking 5 years, but it did. It worked. It worked on the last one.
Hey, Fred. One thing I forgot to mention. Look, the audience is going crazy here. A few details on Fred. Fred holds a PhD in electronic engineering, which would make you wonder why, if you thought for a minute, why he would have, how he came across all this and how he was, how did he become an engineer? Well, he was an electronic engineer. He spent 26 years doing top secret work. Let me put my camera on for a moment. And he was developing algorithms for use in sonar systems. Pretty complicated little thing. And in 1984, he co-founded ChromaTech, which is a bit of the story he just told you. Now they manufactured glasses, I think up till about 2002. Hey, Fred. 2002, our friend John Jarrett, who you sent things to, which is American Paper Optics, who supplies these ChromaDepth glasses, was the one who picked it up. We will in a few. Well, I'll ask you a few questions right now, Fred. But in the future, we'll reinvestigate this interesting story because we got a lot more to it. We just didn't have the time to go into it. But now, Fred, in terms of total sales of these ChromaDepth glasses, what do you think those numbers are around?
150, 200 million. The biggest one, the biggest job we ever had was 75 million paired with Kraft Foods and Nickelodeon for a couple of weeks of Kids TV. But it was a couple hundred million over the decade or so that we owned the company.
Now the gentleman, whatever you mentioned in passing, the gentleman who came up with it. What is he doing these days? I know you're an electronic engineer because that was the thing. You understood it. You understood the potential. So that thing could have just stayed in the basement forever, the whole concept. But you took it to another level, which is where you deserve credit for that.
Yeah, yeah. My partners in ChromaDepth, who designed the machine, for example, to run the film, and came up with the original concept. We're still in a company together. That's the company that actually produced the $100 bill, which I'll quickly tell you. By the way, this was an interesting story. In 2004, the government decided to come up with some new anti-counterfeiting security features on the new on the 100, and they put out an RFP for proposals for technology. 150 companies responded, and luckily they chose us as the prime feature because of all the experience we'd had with nanotechnology, working with nanometer precision, and so we used patents that we had developed for the nanotechnology, and basically made that what the government calls a 3D ribbon.
Wow,
question.
That's interesting. And I will say this, Fred. How come your hair is in such good condition? Are you making trips to the barber? Like, what's going on there, man?
This is a rental. This goes back Sunday.
Yeah.
No, actually, I haven't had a haircut in 11 weeks. I've left the apartment to go upstairs to my roof.
Yeah, I know none of us have. A likely story, man. It's looking pretty good. Well, I mean, that you just dressed up for this thing, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah.
But you guys had a part in actually making the machinery that manufactures the
no, I had no partner. No, I have two very smart partners, so mechanical engineers that are really good machine builders, and we basically put out specifications for various parts of this big machine that we built and had it made like the Manhattan Project, piecewise. It's a miracle of technology, I think. I think everybody watching this will appreciate that the profile of the optic that's on the surface of that film is 1 micron high. But it's not prisms. It's not prism. It's a prism and a diffraction grating back to back. One of those two devices, the prism, creates the large arc that the cinnamon oil did in the liquid form, and the grating gives you the low dispersion version, similar to the glycerin. The profile looks like a trapezoid. It's diagonal down, diagonal down, diagonal down, diagonal down across the width of an eye. If I can, okay, it's hard to move. But you can't build a diagonal. So you can only put steps up that diagonal to the top, which is a micron, then vertically down, then diagonally across again via steps. So MIT Lincoln Lab built the prototype, the first set of stampers for the original film that we made that actually was used in the laser shows. And that had basically 4 binary masks. It was made like Intel would make a microprocessor. So there were 16 steps across the diagonal. They weren't even equal height, by the way, which caused some ghosting initially. But eventually we found a new technology called diamond turning, which is a lathe and a drum and a diamond tip tool, which literally over weeks' time can cut at nanometer precision. In this case, it cut 200 steps, equal height. Instead of 16, 200 steps to the top. Therefore, each step is 5 nanometer precision, which you can see at 40,000 magnification with an electron microscope. So it's still probably the finest precision, highest precision optic in the history of the world. And this was 30 years ago. So anyway, enough said.
Then my last question before we move on is, who came up with the name?
I did. My partners wanted to call these glasses. They have no idea what branding means. I picked the name ChromaTech, which they belatedly agreed to, but they wanted to call the glasses and brand the glasses with cyber holography. What the hell is that? Cyber holograms. I said, please, a brand should at least say what the product does. So I recommended ChromaDepth, and over a couple of drinks, they bought into it. But I'm glad they did. It worked out fine.
Mark Finne.
This is a piece from 1995. actually, a piece that I created while wearing the ChromaDepth 3D glasses. I spent probably about 6 months daily wearing the glasses and experimenting with the different layering processes of just really juxtaposing colors against one another that are formally opposite one another on the color wheel. And if you have ChromaDepth glasses on now, you'll see quite a bit of well, you'll see some depth.
And then how do you use that in your technique? I'm curious. Is that through emotion? Through how do you add that to your palette? Is what I'm trying to get at.
As far as the processes, this is a combination of the application of the paint is with a brush on the outer edges, and within the interior of the rectangles that you'll see is using a palette knife. So I thinly spread the paint, and then just layer and layer and layer. I mean, this is probably in some parts 15, 16 layers.
And how large is this? Because it's hard to, obviously no one knows on a computer screen. How big is this actually?
This piece is I believe 24 by 36, so 3 feet in width, roughly.
Beautiful.
I believe.
Beautiful work.
This piece is 6 feet wide, so 2 feet in height, 6 feet wide. This is called Circles of Life. Just because, well, there's probably about 15 layers on this one too, and I believe that a lot of us have converging circles, and there's a lot of just theory about how we meet someone, and we might come across them like John and I did years later, and well, circles of life. Excuse
Beautiful.
me.
That was a great explanation. Thank you. And I felt that as you were saying. I realized that was another circle close. Thank you. How do you determine? This really pops nicely. In terms of mixing the paints, and how do you manage that? And knowing what paints are going to work, or do you just do that by feel? How do you do that?
Sometimes I mix them. Sometimes I take directly from the tube or the jar. I gotta say, sometimes I just feel. Look, any day I use this phrase. Any day I paint is a good day. So sometimes I just look around. I have my paints hung from the ceiling in my studio, and I just kind of look up and think positively, and it's actually a little hard to describe where the inspiration comes from, but it's primarily from my experiences. This in particular, okay, maybe I'm not answering the question properly, but I rented a helicopter one time and flew over Mount Kilauea in Hawaii, and this one's called Ducha de Lava, and it's touching upon my duality as a individual from a Cuban Norwegian background, right? So I try to bring language into my work. If you see my titles, they're written what I call phonetically, right? With toying with the pronunciation of my last name, Finne or Finne, and phonetics, Finnetix. But Ducha de Lava is like a shower of lava, right? So I flew over Mount Kilauea, and it was erupting, but we were high enough that we weren't getting hit because we're in a helicopter and going through clouds, and the rain coming down. The rain felt like it was coming down at a 45-degree angle, and when it hit my arms as I'm leaning out of the helicopter with the camera, so hence the photography, bringing in the inspiration, I translate this sentiment of this experience into a work of art after the photography. So this is one of my favorite pieces, and I sold this about a year and a half ago, and I miss it. I would love to have it at my home.
Well, we all appreciate it. We see why you missed it, because it's beautiful, and it really works well with ChromaDepth. That yellow in the background seems like there's something in there, like heat. It's like really great. Really works. The background really works great. Yeah, you answered a lot of questions that I wasn't going to ask, but they were all great answers. My underlying question, and we'll get to the next image. How do you put the pigment or is that just happy chance, which I could accept too, in terms of how it's going to work in ChromaDepth? In other words, are there better pigments, or have you discovered that organically, or did you sit around trying to calculate what would work? That's a long question. Your answer should be yes or no. That'd be perfect. Yes. Anyway, if any of that makes sense to you, you can answer it. If not, pass.
The short answer is trial and error.
Yeah. And the name of this one?
The name of this one is called Coral Reef.
Oh, yeah. Nice. And when was this one done?
Good question. That one's about 10 years old. I would say 2007, 2008-ish. Maybe a little over 10 years old. I've seen some pretty phenomenal reefs down at Belize, for example, which is probably the most profound barrier reef in this hemisphere. And even though, this doesn't look like a photograph of the reefs, it's because it's not a photograph. So it's like I said, my translation of it. There's so much color down there, especially in the first atmosphere, right? Or the first 30 feet of depth, that to me, this is fish moving, and it's a reef, and it's plant life. It's all the above. And it's funny because I'm not a good photographer underwater. And also I lack the right equipment for it. So this one's called Rapid Descent. So if anyone out there is a diver, that if you're overweighted and you release all the air in your BCD, your buoyancy control device, you can go down fairly quickly. And the faster you go down, as long as you can equalize your ears by pressing on your nose and popping your ears, you can go down pretty quick. And the quicker you're down there, the more time you have your BT, your bottom time. And scuba diving is one of my all-time favorite situations ever. I mean, it's peaceful, it's exhilarating, it's all at the same time.
Is that how you go down? You go down, is that how you do it? Is that how you get to the bottom? Because I know you want more bottom time, right? Is that the whole point?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's sometimes your ears will stop you, like the pressure in your ears. So you have to release it. So you have to equalize. So you have to move your jaw around, and sometimes you don't want to. You got to be careful doing it. I think my left ear is a little hurting from all my diving, but
yeah, well, that's
beautiful. Can't go down too quick. That's dangerous. Same with if you go up too fast, you get the bends. Don't want that.
Well,
rapid descent. Oh, by the way,
rapid
descent, rapid, ending with a D in descent there, but I put an extra D in there, so it's rapid descent with 3 Ds in the middle of the words.
Is Jessica Ramirez. She's a professor of art at the Borough of Manhattan Community College.
Okay, so what I wanted to talk to you guys about. So about 3 years ago, I think Fred gave a presentation on ChromaDepth, and ever since then, I've actually been implementing it in my students' work. So I've created some assignments for my students in ChromaDepth. So what I wanted to show you guys was in Photoshop, you could do these really cool radial designs using what's called the symmetry tool. So I'm going to show you guys that. It's like a 3-4 minute demo, and then I'll go into some examples that I created. Let's see. Okay, so in Photoshop, you can use, let me move some of this stuff out of the way. Okay. I think I'm missing something. What am I missing here? So in Photoshop, what I wanted to show you guys was how to use, one of my tools disappeared. Where are you? Okay. So I want to show you guys how to use the symmetry tool, the paintbrush tool. I'm also going to get into things like crazy layer effects, blended modes, and filters, all in like 5 minutes. So hang on to your, what's it saying, trousers or something? I don't know. Anyways, so I'm going to show you guys. So the first thing I'm going to do is I created like this 10 by 10 artboard, and then the next thing I'm going to make a solid color background. So I'm going to start off with black. And then from here, at the top, you have this control bar, and let's see, selecting the paintbrush tool, this symmetry option pops up. So I do what's called the mandala option, and I do a 10 segment count. And so you'll get to see really quickly how you can create these really interesting radial designs in Photoshop. So from here, I start creating every color that I lay down on the artboard, I create a new layer for it. And so here I start off with kind of like the cooler colors, because when thinking about ChromaDepth, I think about like the properties of color. So hue, value, and saturation. So all of those things affect the depth, but not only that, you're looking at how color affects color. So whatever color is next to the other color, that also has some influence in how much depth that color how much depth is perceived by that color. So the first thing I'm going to do is start off with something kind of like a muted blue. So using the paintbrush tool, I'm going to go in here and just do some really simple line work. And all of a sudden you have like this really interesting design being created. But because it is my background color, I kind of also want to start playing with like field of depth. So I'm going to go up to the top and go into filters and then select blur and maybe like a little motion blur. Maybe that's a little too much. Let's bring it down a bit. So with my background color, I'll start off with a little motion blur just to get that sense of depth going. And then I'm going to continue on. So as I'm building up layer by layer, I'm gravitating more towards like the yellows and then well, greens, yellows, oranges, and reds. So that's kind of like my progression in this piece. So the next thing I'm going to do is maybe go into some like greens and increase maybe the brush a little bit. And then keep going. And as I'm doing this, I'll flip on my ChromaDepth glasses back and forth. And what's cool about it is like Photoshop has a lot of different brushes, and you can even download custom brushes too. So I can come in here with like a splatter brush. Let me pick something a little bit lighter and create something really interesting like that. So I can keep going and going with different colors, and then like I'll start out with some darker colors at the bottom and then work my way to like some of the brighter tones. And then I can come back in and do some interesting effects with like the blending modes. So, and this is all done like very automatic. So it can come out really interesting, it can come out really bad, but we'll see. Let's see. And if you want to ask me any questions, you can as I'm going through this. So I'm just decreasing the brush size.
Oh.
What's that?
You'll get inundated with questions. You keep moving on. I got only one question though, but hey, look, I'm the chief. I can ask one. Why don't you need to look at it with your glasses? You're just figuring it out intuitively. You know what's going to happen.
I got the basic idea of like how depth is created, and I have experimented with this using like Illustrator, so I get a sense of like what's going to come forward and what's going to recede. So I'll flip them back and forth, and also because it makes you really dizzy, right? You wouldn't want to have these on for hours looking at a screen.
Right. So it's instinct. Got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's super automatic, just nothing planned out, but I get the sense of, like, get the idea of like how each color is going to react to each color. And another thing you could do is like, you can go back to the darker colors and then work your way up again. So as you're layering it, you can kind of interchange, and that also creates a kind of an interesting effect. So. And depending on which brush you use, sometimes Photoshop takes a little bit more time to process the color, the effect, because it's doing it 12 times at the same time with this like symmetry tool. So I can kind of go back and forth, experiment with different brushes, change the size of them, maybe come back in with some lighter colors.
I got a quick, while you're doing that, I got a question for Fred. You still awake, Fred? Can you hear us, Fred? Oh, you got we muted Fred. I understand. No problem. No problem. No big deal. Don't undo it. It's good.
So as I'm doing this, like I can show you guys how to use the blending modes, which is really interesting. And then the last thing I'm going to show you is how to use the layer effects. It kind of creates like these drop shadows and like these bevels to kind of give it more of like depth to the line work. So I'm almost actually done with this design. Let me bring it down a bit. I'm going to zoom into it so we can, because you can also focus on a specific section of it and then you'll see it. Oops, not too much. And so one of the things I noticed, because as I did that series of works that I'm going to show you, is that I kind of gravitated to like really like nature-based designs with the mandala designs. So I can come back in here. And then the last thing I'm going to do to this one is add some really interesting kind of bevel drop shadow effect. So I'm going to zoom out and then double click on the layer.
Oh, wow.
And then go into drop shadow. It'll give it a really nice illusion of depth there. And then go in with the bevel and effect. That'll kind of make it pop too, the bevel and emboss. So this is very automatic, no planning. Let me click out of here and let me show it to you full screen and let me know what you think. And voila. So this is how to create radial designs using Photoshop's symmetry tool. What do you guys think?
Wow.
Great. So the other thing I was going to show you guys, I did about 5 or 6 in the last couple of days, so I can kind of go through those real quick too. So let me hit escape and then show you some of these. I'm going to just go into slideshow and then I think it just does it automatically.
Now,
yeah, there it is.
for anyone who knows, we'll make your email available if you don't mind, because I'm sure people are going to have questions who grasp this. This is kind of like what we did with Jim McManus. You know, people who can grasp it will be able to learn a tremendous amount from what you just did.